It's that time of the week, all right, or time of the show, I should say, because the Union have not one, but two matches this week. And to
Woohoo.
start it off here, we have Orlando City. So without further ado, we're going to get the eyes from the other side. The voice of Orlando City, please welcome on in Mr. Evan Weston. Evan, what's happening?
Evan!
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing great about
Great, how are
yourself.
you?
Good. I got to shout out our Philly listeners and endear everybody with a little "Let's Go Mets" on this wild card
Boo.
afternoon.
Evan.
My guys getting in on the last day.
You
They'll be
actually didn't
eliminated
have
in
to.
about 36 hours, but it's all good. They made it.
I don't know. Mets look dangerous.
We're not talking about the Mets because, first of all, you guys don't even have any pitches right now. Edwin Diaz's arm's going to literally fall off. You've got no one to pitch for you, but we're just going to sit back and eat our popcorn and laugh. I forgot you're a Mets fan. Shouldn't have had you on the show for that reason
standards are a
alone.
little lower in Queens. We're just happy to be here.
Awesome stuff. All right, well, let's talk about this match. I do want to talk about first off, have you been back to Orlando in the last week? I know you go back and forth.
Oh, he lives down there.
Hey, you live in Orlando full time. Oh, awesome. How's the weather out there? That was looking at my question because obviously we've been dealing with the hurricane over there.
Yes, yeah, no, we didn't get a whole lot from
That's
the
good.
weather, so we just got a little outer bands. We were very fortunate. Shout out all the folks in Carolina and Georgia who are dealing with some really awful stuff right now.
All said.
But thankfully, we were spared.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a hard time with the hurricane, so definitely sending our well thoughts to everybody that's been impacted. Listen, Orlando City right now, and I see you're rocking some purple, which good for you. Orlando City right now is sitting in a really good spot in terms of standings. Of course, the Union are right there in the thick of things, trying to climb the table. So we've been talking a lot about the playoff push, and this matchup is huge for both teams, especially for the Union. You know, what have you noticed recently from Orlando's recent form in terms of how they've been looking? It's been some really high-scoring games. We've seen 3-0, 4-3. It's a lot of goals scored, but also giving up a good amount of goals as well. What have you seen in their recent form from Orlando City?
Yeah, we spoke on the show back in May before the first game, and we were both kind of fatalist about where our seasons were going. And these two teams have both had pretty huge turnarounds. It's just that Orlando's has been a little bit longer and a little more dramatic, and that they didn't, do it all in Leagues Cup. They were doing it in the regular season in July. So they put in. They put Martino Heda in as the number 10. That has solidified things. They kind of gave up on Luis Muriel as the answer and have gone back to what worked last year, but with a more proactive number 10. And that has led them on the greatest goal scoring run that they have ever been on. They scored 17 goals in their first 17 MLS games here, and that included the 3 they scored in Philly. So 14 in the other 16. They were bottom of the league. They've scored 36 goals in their last 14 games. They've been the best team in MLS, bar none, since July 1. I wouldn't even really say that they've leaked a lot of goals. They gave up 4 to Columbus without one of their starting defensive midfielders. They'll have both of those guys tomorrow night in Wilder Cartagena and Cesar Araujo. And then they had a kind of an off match in Kansas City where they lost 3-0 coming out of Leagues Cup. And other than that, it's been one or none for the opposing team in every other game. So I think they have been as good as they were at the end of last year, if not even better. Whether that translates in the playoffs remains to be seen. But right now, it's hard to find a team in better form, and they just after 4 months of trying to make it work with Muriel and with Nico Lodero and all these fancy playing 3-5-2. They've just gone back to what worked last year, and it's been sensational.
Sometimes you just got to go back to what you know best, right? And that seems like what Orlando's been doing. But I mean, this attack's insane, Evan. I mean, like I'm looking over like the stats over the past couple matches, or I'm sorry, over the season. Facundo Torres, 13 goals. Duncan McGuire, 9 goals. Ramiro Enrique, 6 goals. So you guys still have plenty of options to choose from in the attack. I'm a little bit jealous, Evan.
Yeah, Facu Torres has kind of taken a leap forward, and I think is now probably one of the top 15 or so players in MLS. He he was left off the Copa America squad for Uruguay back in June, and he took that personally. It was something that he really used as motivation, and I think maybe it freed him up a little bit too. He wasn't worried about, am I good enough? Am I catching attention? He just went out and balled. I think he's got something like 12 goals in his last 17 games. He just
Wild.
tied Kyle Larin as our club's all-time leading goal scorer last weekend. Trying to top that in this game. He's just been on fire, and the relationship with Ojeda has been the key to that. Martin Ojeda got into the starting lineup on June 28th. They scored multiple goals in all but 2 games since he got in. He's got 9 assists in 12 starts. Just a really direct, progressive number 10. Loves to float out wide, get the ball into the box, make things happen, and is a threat to shoot as well, which teams have to account for, which opens up his teammates. So that relationship has been really stellar. And then you mentioned Enrique, who went on a crazy run where he scored in 6 straight games back in the summer, going into the Leagues Cup. He's got goals in 2 straight now. McGuire's coming off the bench. And even Lodero and Muriel, who struggled at the beginning of the year, except for whatever reason in the one game against the Union where Muriel scored twice and Lodero had 3 assists. They have really taken to being super subs. Muriel scored twice off the bench against Columbus a couple of weeks ago. Lodero has 7 assists as a substitute this year. So they've kind of found a mix that works for them. And they're just blowing teams away. I mean, the difference between this year and last year, they won a lot of 1-0s. They were a lot of great record in 1-goal games, kind of overperformed. This year, they're just blowing teams out. Now, the one criticism would be that they haven't really played anybody great, but they did crush Charlotte in a 2-0 game that was probably flattered Charlotte with that scoreline. They crushed FC Dallas on the road this past weekend, a desperate opponent that is getting healthy, has been really good for a couple of months. And they gave Columbus hell. I mean, they came this close to taking something off the Crew in Columbus. And so I think all that is encouraging, and I think the vibes are about as good around here as they've been in some time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you look at the Union, and prior to this 1-1 draw against Atlanta United, their previous 2 games, 5-1 win, 4-0 win. They responded well after a loss to Inter Miami that was kind of like a wake-up call where they honestly just got outplayed, fell asleep for a little while, and when you play against Messi, he's gonna punish you. You guys kind of seem like you're in a similar boat to what we were pre-Atlanta. You talked about the opponents weren't as great. Well, in the last 5 games for you guys, 14 goals that you've scored, it's like 3 has been the average, it feels like. And even of the 5 goals against, the 4 of them were against the Columbus Crew. This team right now, you said the vibes are high. Where are they susceptible? Because yes, we've talked about it for the Union. There are some areas that definitely they got exposed against Atlanta United in terms of not being able to break down their low block, not being able to do enough in terms of finding penetrating passes, finding opportunities to get in behind. It was a lot of forced passes and forced chances. Where is Orlando City susceptible in your opinion? What do you see as like an area of weakness that the Union could possibly exploit from your opinion?
It's interesting. They haven't really had one, but if you look back at the Columbus game, the mistakes were self-inflicted. 3 of the 4 goals were scored on giveaways out of the back. And I think the Union do kind of match up well with Orlando, and they've had success in Orlando in recent years because if you give Orlando City the ball and drop off and pick your spots to press, they do struggle to break teams down. They're lethal on the counter. They've been a lot better with the ball since they put Ojeda into the lineup, but they can make mistakes. And they have guys who are decent passers, but not outstanding passers in their defensive midfield, and their only real plus passer in their spine is Robin Janssen. So if you can press selectively and well, and the Union have always been good at that under Jim Curtin, you can get opportunities on the break that way. And I think I would expect to see Philadelphia, just thinking about this matchup, try to give Orlando the ball, sacrifice possession, and try to hit those beautiful Union counters that we know so well. And Orlando will be ready for that. They'll be dropping off when the Union get possession and trying to get behind the ball as quickly as possible. But we know how quickly you guys can strike and how often that happens. So I would look for those moments in transition when Orlando lose the ball with their defensive midfielders or with their center backs, that's where Philadelphia, I think, is going to have the most success. If
Mm.
Philly can't get out on the break, it's hard to see them just sort of scoring a goal from open play possession with the way Orlando's playing right now.
Yikes.
Evan, real quick, talk about the cohesionness of the back line. Obviously, 46 goals allowed throughout the year, but you guys have seems like you guys have turned the page as a whole, as a club. Kind of talk about that back line for Orlando.
Yeah, a lot of that was early in the season, right, when they were just really struggling. The 46 conceded is a little. Their opponents have also overperformed. Expected goals is yeah makes Orlando City's defense look a lot better. I believe they're eighth in the league now in non-penalty goals, non-penalty expected goals allowed per game, which is really solid. And I would imagine that they're a good bit higher than that since the beginning of July.
Hmm.
They do have some injuries. David Brecalo got hurt a few weeks ago. The guy that has been starting at center back. So Rodrigo Schlegel has come back in, and while we know that Rodri is prone to a mistake here and there, and infamously was sent off in the playoff game they lost to Columbus last year at home, he's been spectacular over the last 4 or 5 games. Even in Columbus, I thought he was the one defensive player that really stuck out as having a good game and otherwise has been flawless. And Dagerdan Torhalson has a minor issue. Not sure about his status for tomorrow night, but Kyle Smith is as solid as they get. The loss there is really more going forward than on the defensive side. Kyle Smith, 6-year vet with Orlando City, can be trusted to do a good job on the right. So they've got good players, and Janssen continues to be one of the best center backs in the league, and even Pedro Galese, who really struggled the first few months of the year, looked like he'd lost a step, has been much better recently. Really started to look like his old self, which Orlando has needed badly for him to stop leaking soft ones. It was mostly happening. So there's a lot there, and then the double pit in front of them, right? William Cartagena and Cesar Araujo. That was the key last year to turning things around. They are both healthy. They're in good form. They missed Cesar with a suspension against Columbus. You could see the drop off there. When the two of them are in there together, it is very hard to score against this team.
This is all very, very encouraging, Evan. Just keep all these positives coming about Orlando City. I will say one thing I have noticed, though, ever since these two teams faced each other earlier in the season, we've seen both teams have made major strides and improvements. You talked about being healthy, having everybody there. The Union have had the same situation. When everyone's been healthy, everyone's back, no one's missing first, yellow card accumulation or international breaks or anything else. To have their group back, you can see the talent is there. It's coming together. Unfortunately for the Union, unlike Orlando City, it took them a little bit longer and they were still dropping some results. So I feel like this matchup is one that can honestly go any direction. They play pretty similarly. They like to high press. They like to get out in transition. They are teams that, have options and a lot of depth, and even in terms of offensive ability, have plenty of playmakers. So that being said, it's always time for my favorite question that none of us really know, but hopefully we have a good idea about. What do you anticipate being the score of this game, in your opinion, based off of how Orlando City's been playing as of late? Personally, I feel like this can go so many directions. I think after tying Atlanta United, the Union, I think, are going to respond. They got a little bit of a wake-up call of just not being able to adjust to the tactical formation and shape and the defensive bunkering down that Atlanta brought. So I think against Orlando, I could see this being, I think there's going to be goals. I could see this being like a 2-1, 3-2 Union win, but I'm curious what you think this game's going to turn out as.
Yeah, I think that Atlanta draw is interesting because that was one that, to me, the Union absolutely had to have with their run in
Correct.
here, where you're playing 3 of the 4 best teams in the league in your last 3 games, and Cincinnati is better on the road than they are at home. So that is just to lose those 2 points. To me, the reaction to that has to be to come out on fire. And I think if Orlando can navigate the first 15 minutes, which they were awful at the first half of the year and have gotten considerably better at as the year has gone on, things set up pretty nicely for them. I don't think the Union's defense is good enough anymore to prevent Orlando from getting the 2 or 3 goals they've been getting every game for the last 3 months. Give me Orlando 2-1, but a draw here would be frustrating for the Lions. I think they expect to win this game, but Philly can't be counted out. Certainly, there's they've been playing too well, and there's too much talent for them to think that they're just going to roll over them. So I agree with you. I think there's going to be goals, and I think it's going to be an end-to-end pretty fun game.
Absolutely. Evan, one more from me, and Mike Thomas in our comment section brought it up as well. Oscar Pareja, it's funny because we talked about it last time, and it just feels like every time I'm looking at Orlando City Twitter or just social media, like there's still like always at least one or two comments about him as a manager here. But dude, like he's been impressive, right? Since he's been there since 2019, like he's been the most successful manager in Orlando history. And what he's done this season, I think it's being able to recognize like what's like you mentioned the Luis Muriel stuff, right? Like that wasn't working. So be able to change that mindset and go into something that's working now. Oscar is awesome, man. I just had to say that.
Well, we just played FC Dallas this past weekend, and look what has happened to them since he left.
Great point.
They're about to be on their third manager. They're going to miss the playoffs again. Their development pipeline has stalled. They can't get any big signings, right? Although Petar Musa, it looked like they finally nailed one. But I mean, it's just the thing with Oscar is that the floor that he sets is so high. You're pretty sure you're going to make the playoffs every year. The big question that people have is, well, how much further can he take you? And I understand that, but at the same time, well, when you lose that floor, as FC Dallas has, you notice, and you start to miss that. And there's a reason he's royalty in that town and got a standing O on Saturday. So, listen, there are probably 25 teams that are worse off than we are in terms of their managerial situation in this league. You guys might not be one of them. I know Oscar has a tremendous amount of respect for Jim, and it's a really good relationship between the two of them. Both guys' names have at different times been thrown out there for the United States job in a different era. So it's one of my favorite matchups of the year always when we see the two of them. But you're right. I mean, Oscar just won his 80th game for the club last weekend. Been in the playoffs every year. Won a trophy in 2022. Can they take that next step? We're going to find out. But I think you don't know what you have until it's gone sometimes. And the stability that Oscar has provided to where the playoffs, I mean, there wasn't really much reaction to clinching a playoff berth because that's just what they expect to do at this point. Plus, 62% of the league gets in. But they've clinched the top 7 spot. They're probably going to finish 4th. And to be routinely top 4 or thereabouts is something that most teams would snatch your hand off for. So I'm with you. I think Oscar does a tremendous job, and he could have lost the locker room very easily this year. They never quit on him. They always play for him. The team loves each other, and that's how you execute turnarounds the way they have the last 2 years.
They always poo-poo the quality of this league, but even in this league, Evan, longevity is so important, and it's crazy to see guys like Oscar and like Jim having this longevity. So it is really cool. But Evan, listen, we appreciate you coming in here, giving us the insight from Orlando, man, and we wish you nothing but the best. Good luck tomorrow.
All right, thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Evan.
We all silly like the mayor.